it's Yubagoon. Welcome back to another episode of AoM Retold Triggers. Today I'll be going over some victory conditions admin and some technologies that you can use in your scenarios. So, what do I mean by this? You're probably used to jumping into the editor, placing a few units down, testing your scenario, and then finding you are set victorious or maybe even defeated after a few seconds. This is because, by default, scenarios have supremacy rules enabled. To turn this off, it's actually a very easy thing to do. You need to go up to the Scenario tab and select Victory Conditions, and from there, uncheck the Conquest Victory condition. Once you do that, you can play test your scenario, and no one's going to be set defeated, and the game isn't going to end. This is great for testing, but you may eventually want your game to end. How do we trigger this? So, for example, we could have standard conditions such as all units are dead, so we could have player all units dead, player 1, and then we've got the effects player defeat, player victorious, individual or allied, depends on your team, and then the end game effect, which will end the actual map for you. So you could set player 2 to victory and player 1 to defeat, and then end the game, which would make sense if player 1 uses all their units. In addition to this, you could also make sure that player has no buildings as well if you want to enforce strict conditions, and again there's a large list of conditions you can do. It's going to depend entirely upon your scenario. How do you set up players? To do this, we go to Scenario Player Data, and from here we can modify our players. So you can see we've got 6 players in the map at the moment. If you want to reduce that to 2, you can press Apply, and that's there. Equally, if you wanted to increase it, the same thing happens. You'll see that new players are set to human by default, with visibility normal. What this means is if you host this scenario, human players will be able to join the lobby in these player slots. Set it to computer, and then no human will be able to join these slots. It will automatically put a computer in. Setting to unavailable means there's no AI, and that's not currently supported online as I'm saying this, so best not to. You can also increase the age at which a player starts. This is just a blanket, it doesn't affect the technology specifically. So you can see I've got the standard archaic age buildings here. If I change myself up to start in the mythic age, I've got the options of changing my gods for each of the sub-ages, but you'll see in the editor I've now got these nice mythic buildings present. So this will only affect buildings because they change with the ages up. It won't affect your units because they need specific technologies in order for them to have heavy archer or look better. You can do this with the set tech status effect. So again, you've got your player. You can filter by age or culture or just type. So you could have archer, and you could have champion archer as a technology. The statuses are unobtainable, so the player will never be able to research that technology. Obtainable, so the player can research that technology as normal. And active, that player has already researched that technology and it's in effect. If you want to make your walls pretty and research wall upgrades, remember the prerequisites, so the player will need to be at least age 2 before you can apply any of these. To give you an example for this, if I go back to my age settings, set myself back into age 1, the archaic age, you can see my buildings have changed. I'd now have to, let's keep the archer as it is, I now need to go into one of the classical ages, and from there I could then set my wall to stone wall as appropriate. If I set that to active, then that's going to take effect immediately. So you see when I playtest this scenario, I've got my wall upgraded and I'm in age 2. I've got Athena's God Power and the Minotaur unit has spawned from the table. These visual changes are only available in playtesting. There's no current way, unfortunately, to set technologies active in the game editor itself. What you saw then was some units spawning, so the Minotaur spawned out of a temple. If you don't want that to happen, there's an easy way of doing that as well. So there's some more effects. So player age up spawning, you can simply turn it off. If you're Hades, you can do the same for shades as well, so you can turn that off if you don't want the player to have shades. Interestingly, if you decide to turn that on for a non-Hades player, and we give them quite a lot of casualties, then what you'll see happens is
Λέγε εισβολή.
is the shades aren't spawning despite that. So you can't just set it on because I'm not Hades. It's like setting the wall without setting the age. I don't have the prerequisite to spawn shades because I'm not worshipping Hades. If I were to change myself over to Hades, then I would be able to spawn shades, but that's on by default, so you're not going to need that. It's possible to do a similar mechanic by triggers, but again, that's a bit more advanced. So with technologies, we've gone through set text status. If you didn't want the restoration to happen, it's the God power enable granting by texts that you want on. To set that off, so that time when you age up, you won't get anything. I'll just do everything here as a quick example. So let's disable God powers, let's disable age up spawning, and let's set some text. So I want classical age with Athena. Let's then go to the heroic age with Apollo, and then finally we'll take the mythic age with Hera. I'm going to give myself champion archers. I'm going to give myself stone wall, and I'm going to give myself citadel wall. So when I test this, my archers are going to be upgraded, my buildings are going to look nice, and my walls are going to be upgraded as well. There you go, so we've got that. You see my archers are looking nice. You'll see that even though I'm in the age 4, I haven't got any god powers or myth units spawned. That's because of the technologies I set and what I disabled there. You'll also see I managed to age up as Hera for Hades, which is not normally possible. Using the technology will essentially set it as active as if you'd researched it. Follow-up question that you're going to get from this is what happens if you're going to cross civilizations and cultures rather than just gods. So let's have a look with this. So we are Hades, but let's take classical age with a Norse god, say Freya, female Freya, because there's 2 of them now with the DLC, and let's take mythical age with an Atlantean god, and then let's go heroic with an Egyptian god. So now let's have a look and see what happens there. So as you'll see, no god powers and no units because we've got those triggers there. Within the temple we can replace some of the units. So we've got the Norse Valkyrie, we've got the Egyptian Scorpion Man, and we've got the Atlantean Lampedes. We've also got some of the associated improvements. This isn't, unfortunately, something you can just throw out all the time, because sometimes there will be multiple myth units, such as if there was a war turtle, a leviathan, or the Norse giants. So I would be sure to try these things before publishing a map, just to make sure that the slots are correct and not overwritten, because that can unfortunately happen quite often. Same with improvements there. I hope that's been a useful bit of admin about victory conditions and technologies, as well as how to use them. The final one I wanted to end on today, because it's quite a simple one, is diplomacy. If you go into the diplomacy editor, you can make players allies or enemies by clicking on these boxes. You can also lock and unlock the teams, which means a player can't change teams in lobby. You can also, of course, set diplomacy by triggers, and again it's the diplomacy effect. You've got the option of just setting it mutual, so with this trigger 1 and 2 would be allies, that would be mutual, so 1 likes 2 and 2 likes 1 as well. There's a few other things in here and we can get onto those in another video. I'd certainly recommend just trying things out, but I hope that one was useful, and it's something I've been asked quite a lot, so I imagine it will be. I will see you again in our next episode.